I'm also going to record. It is 11:01, David.
Okay, Mr. McDermott, confirmed that we're on the YouTube channel. It's being recorded, correct?
Yes, sir.
Have all proper postings been made in the proper counties?
Proper posting was made in Culberson County.
I will go ahead and call this meeting to order. It as my time, 11:01 Central Time. And we'll call the meeting to order.
Apenas llegué aquí.
Excuse me?
No, apenas acabé lo que andaba haciendo.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Mr. McDermott, can you do check attendance and call the roll?
Yes, and let me add, Judge Evans, I think, is joining us now. Judge Ferguson, Chair, is not present. Judge Dominguez.
Present.
Judge Urias from Culberson County.
Present. Present.
Judge Cano from Brewster County.
Present.
Judge Sindro Guevara from Presidio County. Not present. Judge Evans.
Present.
Judge Neely from Hudspeth County.
Present.
Michelle Moore from North Hill Country Public Defender.
Present.
I'm sorry, Mr. Ortiz, I forgot you as chair, but I assume that you're here. Jeff Burkhart from Texas Indian Defense Commission. Not present yet, though I believe he was going to call in at some point. The director of the Office of Court Administration, Megan Lavoie,
Yes, here.
present. And Judge Stephen Abels, not present, but I see that Edwin Colfax from the TIDC is joining, not able to vote, but I think able to represent for TIDC policies or viewpoints. Is that correct, Mr. Colfax? Is muted, but that is, I think, according to our bylaws. So I believe we have a quorum, Mr. Ortiz.
Thank you, Chief McDermott. I don't know if the board members have a chance to review the minutes from the July 12th, 2022 Oversight Board meeting. It was provided via email, everyone. If you have, do we have a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
Judge Evans.
Judge Evans has moved, seconded by who?
Judge Dominguez.
Judge Dominguez. Any discussion in regards to the minutes or any additions or changes? None being made, I put it up for a board that the minutes be approved. All say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. The minutes are approved. Going to number 4, Chief McDermott will give a staffing update regarding his staff.
As all of you know, we received grants from TIDC that were approved at the board meeting and by Commissioners Court in Culberson County to add an additional social worker, additional investigator, and additional felony lawyer. We were able to fill all 3 positions by the end of August. However, the felony lawyer did not work out for various purposes, various reasons, and she decided this was not a good fit and has left us. And so we are still looking for a felony lawyer. That is, I think, going to be a difficult process. We have posted in all the appropriate places, including listservs in the criminal defense community across the state and TCDLA and national organizations. But I know that there are a lot of felony public defender positions open across the state right now, including San Angelo and Atascosa County. I'm not sure what we're going to do in the meantime. There may be a request from me at some point in the future to TIDC and to the board to approve readjusting that to maybe a lower skilled or lower experienced lawyer to be able to fill the position that we might need to spend additional time for training or oversight, but I think that we were going to intend to keep it open for another month or two before we suggest doing that. We did have applications for open misdemeanor position. We had 4, 5, or 6 applicants fairly quickly when we opened that. But for this felony position, it looks like the options are not broad, and we're struggling to figure out what to do with that. We were able to fill the social worker position very quickly with a social worker who moved here from El Paso. And I think that she is great and joined our team really easily. The investigator position we filled with somebody local who was known to the office, and we're very pleased with her as well. So right now the staffing is on track except for that open felony attorney position. And I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has any questions. No, thank you, Mr. Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. McDermott. So going on to item number 5 on the agenda, review salary schedule and discussion of possible action to include budget adjustments for the current budget year and policy decisions regarding the cost of living adjustments or other annual salary adjustments. And I'll turn it over to Mr. McDermott to discuss that issue and proper possible solutions to this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Ortiz. For background purposes to the board, the last across the board salary increases for the office was in the general budget adjustments that were done at the end of 2019 that went into effect in January of 2020. For various reasons, some of which are my fault, we have not been on the Culberson County COLA schedule. And that is partly oversight of mine when submitting budgets. There were a large budget increase in 2019 that I think probably rationally covered the COLAs that were offered by Culberson County in the fall of 2020. And I'll remind the board, and for some of you who are new to the board, Culberson County is our fiscal agent. So all of our money, the grants, go to Culberson County. The other counties participate by interlocal agreement. So we are employees legally of Culberson County. Culberson County in 2020, in October 2020, I believe, and Judge Arias, you can correct me if I'm wrong, offered a COLA increase for their employees of 5% that was in 2020. In October 2021, they offered a 5%, and this year they offered a 7%. Is that correct, Judge Arias?
That's correct.
And the employees here at the public defender have not been part of that. I've not included that as part of our budgets each year in our May meeting. To change salaries, of course, would include going to TIDC and getting budget amendments each year to change the grant amount. But I think, and I would ask Ms. Moore if you could chime in here. I believe that is something that your office already does and has experience with. Can you offer something here?
Yes. So we have gotten, we've been offered the cost of living raises every year since we've been here with Burnett County, and including when we went with the rule and we ended up with additional counties. So it's been a boon for us as far as trying to get people hired. It just gives us one more thing to offer out there, and it gives my people, it just gives them a sense of belonging. They will stay longer, is my belief. So we've done that every year.
And your fiscal agent is also one of the counties of Burnett County. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you've been included on their schedule?
Yes. So
and how has
the cost of
TIDC
living
responded to that? What do they do?
We put it in our budget every year when we go through the grant, so that they have not failed to approve that with us. Now, part of that time, we were with Burnett County Public Defender's Office, and that Burnett County picked us up. So we weren't under the grant at that point in time, but we did have a cost of living raise this year. It went through when we submitted our numbers for the grant.
All right, thank you. And I must apologize real quick. Judge Hoffman has sent me a note that I skipped him on the roll call. So he is present as well and has been from the beginning. So that is something that I believe I've not included for various reasons in my budget. And some of that I think is probably oversight on my part. There are two questions that I talked with Jeff Burkhart from TIDC about, and he's not able, I think, to be on this meeting right now. Because there's some things going on in the legislature. But two things. One is because we've already gone this year to TIDC to ask for budget adjustments. I think there's not an impossibility, but a hesitation on his part for me to do that again in this for covering this fiscal year. Not an impossibility, but that would also include going and asking for changes in the interlocal agreements, which we've just gone through all the 5 commissioners' courts. Jeff Burkhart's suggestion to me, one was a one-time merit bonus to help cover some of the deficiency from not receiving the COLA in this budget cycle. And then separately seeing if the board wanted to agree to put us on as an automatic issue for me to include in my budget each year, whatever Culberson County was going to suggest for their COLAs each year, starting in the budget meetings that we would have starting in May and June of 2023. So I guess those are two separate issues. And Mr. Ortiz, should we address each of them separately?
Yes, please.
So the first suggestion would be, which is I think the easier discussion item, whether I should be directed and whether the board should agree to include in the budget discussions for each year the COLAs that are suggested for Culberson County, to include them in the budget cycle, and then for me to apply for grant adjustments accordingly with TIDC and change the interlocal agreements and do the normal process with that each year.
Do we have a discussion about or questions for Mr. McDermott regarding the first option?
I have a question. How do we normally account for, I mean, I understand, well, I assume that the separate counties are all on this oversight board because everybody makes some kind of contribution to the budget in addition to the grants. And so what I'll just admit my ignorance, but as we're moving forward, I need to be freed from that ignorance. And so I guess what I want to know is, how do we apportion or prorate what each county contributes to the budget?
Judge, there are 4 interlocal agreements for the 4 other counties that they have with Culberson County. There were percentages that were, there were amounts that were set before I was hired. And each year I have, as we have redone the interlocal agreements, I've rewritten them with a dollar amount that matches the percentage that they had agreed to originally 5 years ago.
Okay.
And I can pull that up if you just give me 1 minute. And I was not a part of the discussions that came up with the numbers. These were agreed to before I was hired in 2017. Right now, Brewster County contributes about 45%. Culberson County contributes just under 12%. Jeff Davis County contributes around 8%. Hudspeth County contributes just under 19%. And Presidio County contributes just over 16%. And those percentages reflect the 1/3 contribution that the counties pay. The 2/3 contribution that the state pays is the separate dollars. when I apportion those numbers, the 1/3 and 2/3, that's not precisely right because we have some grants right now where TIDC is paying 100% and the counties are paying 0%. But roughly the sustainable grant model that we're on is for TIDC to pay 2/3. So the percentage numbers I gave for the counties are their percentage of the county contribution to the cost of the program. And I see that Mr. Colfax has turned his video on, so he may want to contribute something to that.
Hi, James. Edwin Colfax, the grant director at TIDC. So the grant reimbursement for the core program is actually just shy of 70%, which is more than our typical rural regional program because there were some special circumstances that our board considered related to the disproportionate number of cases that were associated with the checkpoint in Hudspeth County that were kind of disproportionate to the size of the county. So it was slightly higher than our normal ongoing sustainability funding for rural regional defenders, just under 70%. And then as Mr. McDermott's noted, a couple of the newer grants that we've augmented our support with recently are fully funded by the state. In part through some federal funds that we received for the next several years. So, and because Mr. McDermott wasn't here at the outset, I can tell you that Judge Ferguson, who was really the driving force behind getting this program in place, negotiated with each of the participating counties based on what their current indigent defense costs and budget were and what they could do. And so that negotiation was really kind of organized at the outset through Judge Ferguson's outreach, which with each of the participating counties taking their indigent defense budget as a starting point and going from there.
Thank you both. That's actually very helpful. I knew most of that, but getting old, too much work, etc. So anyway, thank you for that. That's very helpful. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I am all, well, I surprisingly tend to be a fiscal conservative of sorts at times. I certainly believe that, especially for this kind of work and for this office and how difficult it is to recruit out there, that paying people well and having people happy is probably more important than usual. I think it should always be any employer's goal, but I think in this context, it's particularly important that we pay people well and we keep them happy and that they know that they're valued. So I just wanted to know where the money was coming from and how that was. I get it now. It's based on our fiscal agents' sort of practices, but the money comes in from all the other sources, and obviously everybody will pay their share of that. So with that, I am happy and satisfied. I mean, I'll listen to other concerns or questions, but I'm ready to move on this and vote if everybody else is as well.
Now, Mr. McDermott, I don't know if you wanted to talk about the second option. Or do you want to?
Maybe we should finish this one first, and then we can move on to the second question, which is to whether or not to remedy the loss of or the lack of COLAs for the last 2 fiscal years.
Okay. So do I have a motion from the board?
So moved.
I'll second.
So I have a motion by Judge Dominguez that the cost of living adjustment that will go to Culberson County for the 2023 budget year, correct? Is that correct, Mr. McDermott?
Correct. That's how I understood it.
Continuing from there on is my suggested motion, Mr. Ortiz.
And you want to go ahead and restate the suggested?
The suggested motion is for me to include in each budget for the upcoming fiscal year a COLA increase across the board tied to Culberson County's COLA for their employees, starting the fiscal year 2023 budget and continuing on unless otherwise modified by this board.
This is Judge Dominguez, and that is my motion. So moved.
And second. By Ms. Moore.
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion regarding this motion? Hearing the motion, let's put it up for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? And anyone abstaining from this vote? Okay, motion carries as moved.
Thank you.
Mr.
I'm sure
McDermott?
my staff will appreciate that too. Thank you very much. The second question, and that was the question that was suggested from Mr. Burkhart in a private conversation to me, so not part of the board meeting, was whether there could be a one-time merit bonus given to employees to make up for the lack of COLAs in the past years. I don't know how that would work. I've not spoken with Mr. Colfax about sort of the technicalities of that. I can give some broad overviews of the state of our finances right now. Culberson County has not, the auditor's office has not fully adjusted our accounting system to include our new grants. So the money, the dollars for the fiscal year we just finished are a little unclear to me right now. Because, for example, we had money for startup costs for the new employees that we spent starting at the end of June. They included that in the budget for that expenditures in the budget that was set for last year. They didn't create budget line items for the amounts that were tagged into the new grants. And so I still need to do some cleanup there. Given that we were not traveling, again, because of Zoom hearings or traveling nearly as much and other cost savings, it looks like we did not spend, at the very least that I can document, around $28,000 last year, given the startup costs that were included in the expenditures last year, but we're not given a budgeted line item. That was probably another $15,000 about that we were probably not spending. So somewhere between $28,000 and $40,000 is probably what we did not spend last year. Now, I don't know how that would work if it were a suggestion from the board or a motion from the board. I don't know, and Mr. Colfax can clarify as well for some of this, if the suggestion that Mr. Burkhart was making would be able to include monies that were budgeted for last year but not spent, or if that would be projection based on monies that we would not be spending this upcoming fiscal year, and to which employees that money would go to. The options that look like are viable to me based on those numbers would be for, well, let me start here. In the past fiscal year, we were understaffed for the entire year. And the work that the staff who was with me last year did was, and I don't think I'm overstating it to say that it's heroic. Mr. Chambers in particular was indispensable to me, indispensable of keeping this program going. But all the social worker, Sarah Cash, the investigator, Connie Santan, and the administrative assistant who shouldered a lot of the ongoing work of keeping the work going. I'm surprised I have any of them still working for me, given what we went through last year. And they're here and they've been amazing. If it were, so I can start with that. I'll call them legacy employees at this point. If it was legacy employees, I think that there would be money there based on what was not spent last year, depending on how this would be apportioned, for 10%, which would be under still what Culberson County had given over the past 2 years. That would be across the board for everybody. I think the budget would support 5%, and I don't know how the money could work. I think Mr. Colfax can probably tell us more. I don't know what the board's inclination would be or how they would want to view this, but I believe that something I am happy to say that there is work that can happen in this office that does not rely on me, and that is because my staff has stepped up and been able to run this program, and it's been amazing. And I want them to know the appreciation.
Mr. McDermott, could I just kind of rephrase my understanding of your proposal from the grant perspective, just to make sure that I'm clear?
Yes.
So my understanding was that the two things. Your first proposal to the board that was passed was moving forward in future fiscal years, you want to make a routine reassessment based on the Culberson COLA policy for the budget for the coming year. So that would, my understanding initially was that would begin for the FY24 budget year, which is October 1, 2023, moving forward.
Correct. That was
that
was how I phrased the motion. I think that's what passed.
Okay, and so the proposal that you're considering now would be to do a budget adjustment of your current grant that would reallocate some salary savings because you had some open position, largely salary savings, but also some travel that you didn't use, but that you had some unused budget in different line items. And the proposal, as I understand it, is that you would request to reallocate some of that unused budget to your staff compensation in the form of some type of one-time merit payment in light of the fact that they did not access the routine COLA adjustments. And so
yes, I think that's right. I think that's what Mr. Burkhardt had suggested that I think about and propose to the board. The mechanics of that is what I don't know.
So there are a couple of things. I think you could look at the current fiscal year, the 2023 fiscal year, and based on your open positions, the anticipated savings or the other places, and you could request to reallocate some of that money for this purpose. Alternatively, I think you could, the Culberson County could request to extend the term of the FY22 award if there was unused budget in that award after the final accounting, and do a reallocation of some of those unused funds from the previous fiscal year for this purpose. So there are a couple of different ways I think what you're proposing could be accomplished, which both depend on kind of an analysis of the unused budget in each of those fiscal years that are still kind of open and available.
And I can say this, in the next couple of weeks, I can get the final numbers and work with the auditor to figure out what the unused portion was. I think that is the easier path because my anticipated savings for the upcoming fiscal year that we just started would come from a lot of the travel expenses that we've not been using. I checked with Judge Ferguson this morning, who seems to have his finger on the pulse as much as anybody can of what the future may hold. And he is unsure of what the Supreme Court's mood is about Zoom hearings. And a lot of our travel savings have to do with us being able to do dockets over a Zoom. And so it could be that we end up next year with, a budget surplus again, and we could end up next year having spent it all. Depending on what the Supreme Court's decisions are. So it seems to me that the retrospective approach is the more prudent fiscal path.
So Edwin, Michelle Moore here. So how fast do we need to have that done to reach back into the old budget? I mean, do we have a time constraint on that?
So I think, if I understand the proposal, I think that the first step is to request, well, it's really two aspects of what needs to happen in terms of formulating a grant modification request. I think you need to request an extension of the term of the FY22 grant award for, say, 2 to 3 months to give time for some kind of adjustments as are being contemplated. Just extend the term of that fiscal year's award. And then, as Mr. McDermott said, there will be a final accounting of how much was not used. And then once that accounting is, once the program has clarity on how much was not used up in the previous fiscal year, you could propose a budget adjustment that would reallocate unused budget for the purpose of the sorts of compensation that Mr. McDermott's proposing. In terms of the timeline, I mean, I think, obviously it would be better to address, to get that request to us sooner rather than later. It's not the kind of, that kind of reallocation doesn't have to go before the board because it's a budget adjustment within the approved award amount. Doesn't make any fundamental changes to the program's structure or staffing. So it's the kind of thing that could be processed at our staff level. So no hard deadline, but I think the sooner it could be presented, the better to close out that award.
And this is Judge Dominguez, and I apologize again to those who didn't hear me before. My camera is off, not out of disrespect, but anyway, long story short, I am working from home and my computer is in front of blinding light and I just look like a ghost. So I figured you'd rather see a picture of a person than the ghost. I believe in what you all are doing, what we're trying to do in spirit, and I anticipate supporting it, but I think I need numbers first. I need to be able to see what those numbers are going to be, what the actual numbers are going to be. And I'd also like to get a sense of, since we're tying it to what Culberson did, I'd like to get a sense of what those numbers look like or would have looked like if they had occurred. So, having that, I mean, on the one, anyway, I just need to see all of that to be able to do a better analysis. And so with that, I need to step away. So I apologize for that, but I wouldn't be able to vote on that anyway today. So you're not going to lose quorum if I step out, are you, James?
No.
Okay. So again, sorry to talk so much without a camera on, but everybody stay safe. And it's good to see people are doing well out there. Thank you.
Now, Mr. McDermott, do you feel that it's an item that should probably be tabled for another meeting for the subsequent month?
We can do a meeting in November, Mr. Ortiz. I think that what I've heard from Edwin, from Mr. Colfax is, first thing I need to do is get the final accounting reconciled with Culberson County. And what I have in front of me now is basically an unreconciled version that does not take into account the new line items for the grants and how monies were spent. The second thing that I would do based on Judge Dominguez's suggestion is to project out what the salaries for individuals would be if they had received the COLAs for the last 2 years, based on when their start dates were, is what I was hearing from Judge Dominguez. And then look at the numbers as to how they look on that level. Does that seem like that was reflective of what was the third step? Would be then to talk to TIDC, but we're not at that step until after a board meeting, another board meeting. I can send all that information by email. And then the question is, do we need to have another meeting by Zoom, or would we be able to have discussion, or would there be enough agreement now based on that for us to be able to take votes on email? And that's also, did not hear one way or the other about what that means. I just want to mention that those are two options. But Mr. Colfax, does that sound like the right steps?
Yes, final accounting of how the FY22 fiscal year settles out. You have clarity about how much is available for this purpose, and then sharing with your board members the what would have been salaries had they been part of the Culberson COLAs,
Yeah.
and then making a proposal to your board with specific numbers, I suppose, I think is what I heard. So and then formulating that request and presenting it to us.
Great.
I think those are the steps.
I can do that.
Do we have any other comments or questions or discussion?
Judge Arias, I hate to put you on the spot, but I'm yours in some sense. So your feedback is important to me if there's any thoughts that you have.
That's scary, huh?
I know.
You're mine, huh?
Yes, sir.
No, I agree with everything Judge Domingo said, and as well as Edwin. Let's go with the adjustments through our auditor. I'll talk to him as well, and let's work on that. That'd be the quickest way to get you those adjustments, cost of
Great.
living adjustments. That's the easiest way.
Thank you, Judge.
You bet. You bet. I'll need to talk to you on another matter, please. When this is done, please call.
I'll give you, or we can stay on after this meeting is over, Judge, or I can call you. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, so we're gonna go move on to the public comment section. Do we have any public comments?
I see nobody in the waiting room, Mr. Ortiz.
Okay,
And the information on how to log on for public comment was duly posted in Culberson County.
thank you. Now going to item number 7, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved, Judge Evans.
So moved by Judge Evans to adjourn the meeting. It is.
Second.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Judge Udias, correct? All say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned at 11:37 a.m., 10:37 Mountain Time.
Thank you. Mr. Judge Arias, if you want to stay on, we can chat if that's okay with
Okay,
you.
no.
Did you gonna take it off YouTube?